Joining us now, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you. Good morning.
Let's start with travel hassles during the busy summer travel season. We've had weeks of cancellations and delays amid a pilot shortage. This comes as there are complaints from passengers they're not being treated well by the commercial airlines. And after American taxpayers gave the commercial aviation industry $54 billion during the pandemic, can you understand why some taxpayers feel like they aren't getting their money's worth from the airline industry?
That's right. A lot of passengers have experienced frustration, including me and millions of other Americans. Now, we've seen some improvement over the course of the summer, but still not at an acceptable level in terms of performance, cancellation, and delays. So here's what we're doing about it. We'll collaborate with airlines when they're ready to take steps that are positive and proactive, whether that's improvements in pay that are helping with hiring or flexibility in customer service. We're also going to enforce passenger and consumer rights. And this is not new for us. Matter of fact, it was last year that I announced the stiffest fines ever imposed under our consumer protection program for airlines that were failing to provide refunds to passengers after they got stuck with cancellations. Matter of fact, we have just concluded another 10 investigations on airlines on these issues and have launched another 10 or so that we're going to pursue to make sure that consumers and passengers are protected. At the same time, I do want to emphasize again, we've seen movement in the right direction. You know, I gathered airline leaders after the Memorial Day travel weekend. We saw a really high level of cancellations and delays there. The July 4th travel weekend we just came through, which had some of the busiest travel days of the year. Definitely fewer cancellations and delays. The numbers I just saw from the last few days, they're around 2–2.5%, still higher than they should be. It's never going to be zero, but we really want to see them push toward the 1% or so with realistic scheduling, responsible customer service, and all of the things airlines need to do to properly service the tickets that they are selling to passengers.
U.S. commercial pilots must retire at age 65 by law. NBC did a study finding, quote, by 2029, not a single baby boomer will be able to legally fly commercial aircraft. As they leave, they take not just a substantial part of the labor force with them, but also decades of expertise and experience in the air. I'm told Senator Lindsey Graham is talking with colleagues about potentially raising that retirement age for commercial pilots to 67. Would you support that?
Look, these retirement ages are there for a reason, and the reason is safety. I'm not going to be on board with anything that could compromise safety. Now, what's clearly the case is we need to cultivate, train, and support a new generation of qualified pilots. Matter of fact, just last week, I was out with some programs that are helping to cultivate that interest in students and support them as they get their hours and get those qualifications. The answer is not to keep the baby boomer generation in the cockpit indefinitely. The answer is to make sure that we have as many and as good pilots ready to take their place, to have a stronger pipeline. We're backing that up with FAA programs that support high school and college curriculum to get into aviation. And of course, ultimately, it'll be for the airlines and those employers to hire and retain excellent talent. And, you know, this is an issue we're seeing across the aviation sector, across the transportation sector at large, the importance of having competitive pay, great job quality, so that we can bring in and keep the people that are going to be needed to power America's transportation sector.
The White House had a major victory last year, passing a massive infrastructure package. Supply chain issues and inflation are driving up the price tag. You've said that basically the funding rolls out over 5 years. We're 7 months into that process. What are you and your team doing to try to move things along?
Well, we have been announcing a new program every few days pursuant to that infrastructure law. Right now, for example, we're in the middle of rolling out up to $1 billion in airport improvements. And these are going out to airports across the country. Orlando's going to see about $50 million to help expand gates and allow them to have more capacity and accommodate more passengers. Chattanooga's going to see improvements that help passengers move more smoothly through the airport. And we're not forgetting smaller, more rural facilities that might not be household names, but could mean a huge amount economically to those regions. Chamberlain, South Dakota, for example, their general aviation terminal right now is a mobile home. We're going to fund them to have the kind of terminal they really need in order for flight operations there to grow and to succeed. So we're proud of what we're doing, whether it's this airport terminal program going to 85 airports around the country that we're working on this week, or initiatives to eliminate railroad crossings that can be both a headache and a safety hazard in communities across the U.S., or of course so much funding going to fixing roads, bridges, and other facilities that people need in order to get to where they need to go safely and conveniently.
Quick follow-up, how quickly will people see improvements in those airports?
So the funding is flowing now. It obviously depends on the project a little bit. You know, constructing a whole new gate or a terminal takes longer than some of the more modest improvements. It really varies from airport to airport. And this is an important thing to point out. We're not creating all of the designs in Washington. We know that it's local communities and individual airports or facilities that are going to know what their needs are. We're trying to provide more of the funding. But again, those dollars are going to be moving quickly. And I'll tell you, even before you see the improvements finished, you're going to see a lot of construction jobs associated with putting them in.
Will we see any projects that resemble some of the historic infrastructure investment years ago, such as when the nation built the interstate highway system?
Sure, we're funding a lot of improvements for roads and bridges too, but we're doing it in a better way, I would say, than has been done in the past. You know, there are a lot of lessons from the choices of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. A lot of communities can point to where a highway that was put in a period where they didn't pay attention to the community or listen to the community really cut up and separated a lot of our towns. And so we're also funding ways to reconnect those communities. When a rail line or a highway overpass is doing as much harm as good, we're going to do it better this time. The 2020s, I think, is going to be remembered as a period where we set up infrastructure that we were going to be proud of for an entire century. And I'm thrilled to be part of the process of working with states, working with cities, working with communities, working with airports and transit authorities to get that work done.
Let's go to a red-hot issue here in Washington. Your husband tweeted after Justice Brett Kavanaugh left a Washington restaurant due to protesters. The tweet reads, "Sounds like he just wanted some privacy to make his own dining decisions." Is that appropriate, sir?
Look, when public officials go into public life, we should expect two things. One, you should always be free from violence, harassment, and intimidation. And two, you're never going to be free from criticism or peaceful protest, people exercising their First Amendment rights.
Okay.
And that's what happened in this case. Remember, the justice never even came into contact with these protesters, reportedly didn't see or hear them. And these protesters are upset because a right, an important right, that the majority of Americans support was taken away.
Understood.
Not only the right to choose, by the way, but this justice was part of the process of stripping away the right to privacy. As long as I've been alive, settled case law in the United States has been that the Constitution protected a right to privacy, and that has now been thrown out the window by justices, including Justice Kavanaugh, who, as I recall, swore up and down in front of God and everyone, including the United States Congress, that they were going to leave settled case law alone. So yes, people are upset. They're going to exercise their First Amendment rights. And as long as that's peaceful, that's protected. Compare that, for example, to the reality that as a country, right now, we're reckoning with the fact that a mob summoned by the former president
All right, well, let me follow up, Mr.
violently
Secretary.
attacked the United States Capitol for the purpose of overthrowing the election and very nearly succeeded in preventing the peaceful transfer of power.
But
I think common sense can tell the difference.
But as a high-profile public figure, sir, are you comfortable with protesters protesting when you and your husband go to dinner at a restaurant?
Protesting peacefully outside in a public space? Sure. Look, I can't even tell you the number of spaces, venues, and scenarios where I've been protested. And the bottom line is this. Any public figure should always, always be free from violence, intimidation, and harassment, but should never be free from criticism or people exercising their First Amendment rights.
All right, let me ask you a campaign question, sir. Do you expect President Biden to run for re-election in 24? And if not, will you run?
Yes, I do expect him to run. I'll support him. And let me tell you why he's going to have a lot to be proud of. And I'm going to choose my words carefully because I'm appearing as an official and this is not a campaign-related appearance. But I'm proud to be part of this administration that has done such work to bring America back from the brink of a recession, to create record job growth, to build achievements that would not have been thought possible just a couple of years ago, like the bipartisan infrastructure law that I have the honor of working on. You know, people scoffed at the idea that you could get anything done on a bipartisan basis in Washington, and yet the president delivered it. And that's after years and years, multiple presidents and multiple Congresses coming and going, promising infrastructure bills without any results. This president, this administration got it done, and I'm proud to be part of that.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. Thanks for making time this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.